The blade was 3 inches from her throat when the world stopped moving. Natalie Keller didn't even have time to scream. One moment she'd been running through the abandoned subway tunnel, her breath ragged and her legs burning, and the next she was pinned against the cold concrete wall by 3 figures in black tactical gear. The one holding the sword had dead eyes and a smile that promised pain. She'd stumbled into something she didn't understand, and now she was going to die for it. Then he appeared. She didn't see him arrive. There was no dramatic entrance, no flash of movement her human eyes could track. He was simply there, his pale hand wrapped around the blade 3 inches from her neck, holding it as casually as someone might catch a falling leaf. The metal didn't cut into his skin. It didn't even seem to register as a threat. "Touch her," the stranger said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries and the promise of annihilation, "and I end your bloodline." The man holding the sword went rigid. The 2 others flanking him took immediate steps backward, their weapons lowering. Natalie could see their hands shaking even through their gloves. "Lord Draeven," the one with the sword whispered, and his voice cracked like a teenager's. "We didn't know she was." "You didn't know," Draeven repeated, and Natalie felt the temper tunnel drop 10 degrees. "You didn't think. You hunted a human through my territory, raised weapons in my domain, and dared to threaten what belongs to me." Natalie's brain was still trying to catch up. What belongs to him? She'd never seen this man before in her life. She would have remembered. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with hair so pale it looked like spun silver in the dim emergency lighting. His skin had the same alabaster quality, luminous and perfect in a way that made her think of marble sculptures in museums. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, and he moved with the kind of fluid grace that suggested violence was always just beneath the surface. His eyes, when they flicked to her for just a moment, were crimson, not red-rimmed or bloodshot. Crimson, like rubies, like fresh blood, like nothing human. "My lord, we were tracking a thief," one of the others tried to explain. "She witnessed, I know what she witnessed." Draeven released the sword and it clattered to the ground. The man who'd been holding it didn't dare bend to retrieve it. "She saw you feeding in the financial district, careless, reckless, and rather than accepting your failure, you decided to compound it by hunting an innocent through the underground. The laws state the laws." Draeven interrupted, and now there was something ancient and terrible in his voice. "Were written by me. Do not presume to lecture me on my own decrees." He took a step forward, placing himself fully between Natalie and her would-be killers. "You have 2 choices. Leave now and accept exile from this territory, or stay and let me demonstrate why, even among our kind, I am called king." They chose exile. All 3 of them vanished into the darkness of the tunnel so quickly that Natalie wondered if she'd hallucinated them entirely. But no, the sword was still on the ground. Her racing heart was still trying to break through her ribcage, and the impossible man who'd saved her was still standing there, close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from him. "You're safe now," he said, turning to face her fully. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Beautiful in the way poisonous things were beautiful, dangerous in the way a sword was dangerous even when sheathed. "They won't return." "What?" Her voice came out as a croak. She swallowed and tried again. "What the hell was that? What are you?" Something flickered across his perfect features. Amusement, maybe. Or appreciation for her directness. "I think you already know, Natalie Keller. You're an intelligent woman. You've spent the last 3 hours running through the city, trying to make sense of what you saw. A man with fangs drinking blood from a victim in an alley. Except the victim walked away afterward, dazed but alive, and the man moved faster than your eyes could follow." "That's impossible," she said automatically, even as her brain supplied the only word that fit: vampire. "Vampires aren't real, and yet here I stand." He extended one pale hand toward her, palm up, not touching but offering. "My name is Draeven Sanguis. I am the vampire king of this territory, which includes everything from the Hudson River to the Atlantic coast, and you, whether you intended to or not, have stepped into a world that humans are meant to forget." Natalie stared at his hand. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get away from this creature, this thing that shouldn't exist. But her legs felt like water, and somewhere beneath the terror was a strange, irrational curiosity. He'd saved her. Those others would have killed her without hesitation, but he'd stopped them, protected her, called her his. "Why did you tell them I belonged to you?" she asked instead of taking his hand. His crimson eyes gleamed. "Because it was the fastest way to ensure your safety. In our world, property rights are sacred. If I claim ownership of something or someone, no other vampire may harm it without answering to me directly." "I'm not property." "No," he agreed. "You're not, but they don't need to know that." He lowered his hand, accepting her refusal with grace. "Come. We shouldn't linger here. There are others who might not be so easily discouraged, and I would prefer to have this conversation somewhere more comfortable. I'm not going anywhere with you. Then you'll die, he said it matter-of-factly, without malice or threat. Just stating a truth. You've seen too much. The vampires who were feeding will report what happened, and word will spread through the underground. You're a liability now. Every vampire in the territory will know your face by dawn, and many of them won't care about my protection. They'll wait until you're alone, unguarded. They'll be more careful than the fools tonight. The worst part was that he was right. Natalie had spent 3 years as an investigative journalist, and she knew when someone was lying. This creature, this king, was telling her the absolute truth. She'd crossed some invisible line tonight, seen something she was never meant to see, and there was no going back. If I come with you, she said slowly, what happens then? Then I keep you alive long enough to figure out a more permanent solution. He gestured toward the far end of the tunnel. My car is waiting. I promise you'll be treated as a guest, not a prisoner. You have my word as king. The word of a monster. Yes, he said simply, but a monster who has kept this city's vampire population under control for 3 centuries. A monster who enforces laws that prevent wholesale slaughter of humans, a monster who just saved your life. He tilted his head slightly. I've been called worse things, Natalie. Monster doesn't offend me. She searched his face for any sign of deception and found none. Just that same eerie calm, that absolute confidence. Finally, because she didn't have a better option, and because some deep instinct told her that he meant what he said about protection, she nodded. One wrong move and I'm gone, she warned him. Noted. He led her through the tunnels with the ease of someone who knew them intimately. They emerged in what looked like a service entrance for an old building, and true to his word, there was a car waiting. A black sedan with tinted windows and a driver who didn't look twice at Natalie's disheveled appearance. The interior was pristine leather and expensive cologne. Draeven settled across from her, giving her space, not crowding her. The car pulled away from the curb smoothly, heading uptown. Where are we going, she asked. My residence. The Sanguis estate. It's in the Upper East Side, hidden by wards and legal protections. You'll be safe there while we determine what to do next? Wards, like magic? Like very old magic, yes. Vampire magic is different from what humans imagine, but it's effective. He watched her with those unsettling red eyes. You're handling this better than most would. I'm a journalist, she said. I've covered war zones and natural disasters. I'm good at compartmentalizing. The panic attack will probably come later. That earned her something that might have been a smile. Honest. I appreciate that. The drive took 20 minutes, which gave Natalie time to study the creature across from her. Vampire. Her mind still stumbled over the word, but she couldn't deny the evidence. The unnatural beauty, the impossible speed, the way he'd stopped a sword with his bare hand, the way he didn't seem to breathe, didn't blink as often as a human would. Why do you look like that? She asked finally. Like what? The pale skin, the white hair, the red eyes. Is that all vampires or just you? All of us, he replied. When a human is turned, the transformation burns away the pigmentation. We become as we were meant to be, creatures of the night marked by our nature. The red eyes are a sign of our hunger, our need for blood. They return to a more natural color only when we're well fed and at peace, which is rare. So you're hungry right now? Always, he said quietly. That's the curse and the gift. We're apex predators, Natalie. The hunger never truly leaves. We simply learn to control it. The car pulled through tall iron gates into what looked like the courtyard of a Gothic mansion. Natalie had lived in New York her entire life and had never known this place existed. The building was all dark stone and tall windows, elegant and imposing. Welcome to my home, Draeven said, as the driver opened the door. Inside was even more impressive. The entrance hall had marble floors and tapestries that looked centuries old. Candles burned in iron sconces on the walls, mixing with more modern lighting to create an atmosphere that was both ancient and contemporary. A grand staircase curved upward to the second floor. 2 more vampires waited in the hall, both with the same pale beauty as Draeven, but with an obvious difference in bearing. They bowed as he entered. My lord, the taller one said, his accent Eastern European. We heard there was trouble in the underground. Handled, Draeven replied. Lucien Seraphine, this is Natalie Keller. She's under my personal protection. Spread the word through the court. Anyone who harms her answers to me directly. The one called Lucien's eyes widened slightly as they flicked to Natalie. You've claimed a human? I have. That's unprecedented, my lord. Then it will make an interesting precedent. Draeven's tone made it clear the discussion was over. Prepare the East Wing guest suite and have Morrigan send up appropriate clothing and necessities. Seraphine, who had long silver hair braided down her back and moved with dancer-like grace, bowed again. Of course, my lord. Welcome, Miss Keller. If you need anything, you need only ask. They disappeared up the stairs, moving with that same preternatural speed. Natalie felt suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline crash hitting her all at once. I realize this is overwhelming, Draeven said, his voice gentler now. But you're safe here, I swear it. Come, I'll show you to your rooms. He led her up the grand staircase and through hallways lined with artwork that belonged in museums. The guest suite was larger than her entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed, a sitting area, and tall windows that overlooked a private garden. Everything was decorated in deep burgundies and golds, elegant without being oppressive. The bathroom is through that door, Draeven indicated. You'll find everything you need. Seraphine will bring clothes shortly. Are you hungry? Thirsty? Natalie realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since noon and it was well past midnight now. Yeah, actually, Sul, I'll have food sent up. He moved toward the door, then paused. I know you have questions. Tomorrow, when you've rested, I'll answer all of them. But for tonight, try to sleep. You're safe here. No one will disturb you, Draeven, she said, surprising herself by using his name. He turned back. Thank you for saving me. His expression softened in a way that made him look almost human. You're welcome, Natalie. After he left, she sank onto the edge of the bed and let herself shake. Vampires were real. She'd been nearly murdered. And now she was in some kind of vampire mansion under the protection of their king. Her life had gone completely insane in the span of a few hours. A soft knock came at the door. Seraphine entered with an armful of clothes and a warm smile that didn't quite reach her crimson eyes. I've brought options, she said. I wasn't sure of your size, but I think these should work. And food is coming shortly, thank you. Natalie watched the vampire woman lay out several outfits on the bed. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why is he doing this? Protecting me. He doesn't know me. Seraphine paused, considering her answer carefully. Lord Draeven takes his responsibilities seriously. This territory, the humans in it, he sees them as under his care, even if they don't know he exists. But this, she gestured vaguely, bringing you here, claiming you publicly, that's different. I've served him for 70 years, and I've never seen him take such a personal interest in a human. What does that mean? I'm not sure, Seraphine admitted. But it means something. Lord Draeven doesn't act without reason. She moved to the door. Rest, Miss Keller. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. The food arrived minutes later. Warm bread, roasted chicken, vegetables, and wine. Natalie ate mechanically, her mind racing. When she finally crawled into the bed, she expected to lie awake for hours, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. She dreamed of crimson eyes and voices speaking in languages older than civilization. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows. For a moment she thought the entire previous night had been some kind of stress-induced nightmare. Then she saw the elegant room around her, felt the silk sheets against her skin, and remembered everything. Fresh clothes had been laid out on the chair, jeans that fit perfectly, a soft sweater, undergarments, socks. Someone had come in while she slept, which should have been terrifying but somehow wasn't. She dressed quickly and ventured out into the hallway. The mansion was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Her footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors as she made her way back toward the grand staircase. Morning light filled the lower level, but there was no sign of anyone moving around. Hello? She called out tentatively. A door opened to her left and a young woman emerged. Not a vampire, her coloring was normal, her movements fully human. She smiled warmly. Miss Keller, good morning. I'm Hazel. I help manage the household. Lord Draeven asked me to make sure you were comfortable. Where is everyone? Natalie asked. The vampires are in their day chambers, Hazel explained. Sunlight won't kill them instantly, but it causes immense pain and weakens them significantly. So during the day, they sleep in protected rooms deep in the house. Lord Draeven left instructions for your care. She gestured toward the back of the mansion. There's breakfast in the solarium if you'd like, and he asked that you make yourself at home. The library, gardens, and main living areas are all open to you. He has human servants, a few of us, yes, well paid and well protected. It's not a bad life, honestly. Hazel started walking, clearly expecting Natalie to follow. The vampires here are decent, as far as immortal predators go. Lord Draeven especially, he's fair, kind even in his way. The solarium was a beautiful glass-walled room filled with plants and morning light. Breakfast was laid out on a table. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, coffee. Natalie filled a plate and sat down, trying to process everything. How long have you worked here? She asked Hazel. 5 years. I was in a bad situation and Lord Draeven helped me out of it. Offered me a job, a safe place to live. I know what he is, what they all are, but he's never been anything but honorable with me. Does he feed on you? No. He has donors who volunteer for that. Humans who enjoy the experience. Apparently a vampire's bite can be pleasurable if done right. But it's always consensual here. That's one of Lord Draeven's strict laws. No forced feeding in his territory. Natalie sipped her coffee, thinking. Everything she'd ever read or seen about vampires painted them as monsters, predators who saw humans as nothing more than food. But this was different. Organized, civilized almost. What happens when the sun sets? She asked. He'll want to speak with you, Hazel said. He has a plan, I'm sure. He always does. Natalie spent the day exploring the mansion. The library was incredible, filled with books in dozens of languages, some of them ancient beyond belief. She found texts on vampire history, magical theory, territorial law. She read voraciously, trying to understand the world she'd stumbled into. There were hierarchies, she learned. Vampire society was feudal, with kings and lords ruling territories. Lesser vampires sworn to their service. Draeven was one of the oldest and most powerful. His bloodline traced back to the original Turned. He'd held his territory for 300 years, which was apparently exceptional. Blood laws governed everything. How vampires could feed. How they could create new vampires. How they interacted with humans and with each other. Breaking these laws meant facing the king's justice, which seemed to be swift and absolute. As the sun began to set, Natalie felt her nerves return. She'd returned to her room to freshen up when the knock came at her door. Draeven stood in the hallway, looking exactly as he had the night before. His white hair was pulled back from his face, and he wore another immaculate suit. His crimson eyes found hers immediately. "Good evening," he said. "I trust you slept well? Better than I should have, considering." She stepped back to let him enter. "I've been reading. Your library is impressive. Knowledge is power, even for immortals. Perhaps especially for immortals." He moved to the window, keeping just out of the direct path of the fading sunlight. "I've been considering your situation. I believe I have a solution, Finn." "I'm listening. The problem is that you know our secret. Normally we would have options. Alter your memories with compulsion, arrange for your disappearance, or turn you into one of us. But memory compulsion only works if the vampire is significantly older and more powerful than the subject, and you have an unusually strong will. I attempted to sense your mind last night and found it resistant." "You tried to get into my head?" Natalie demanded. "To assess whether compulsion was viable," he said calmly. "It's not. As for disappearing you, I find that option distasteful, and turning you without your explicit consent would be a violation of my own laws." He turned to face her fully. "Which leaves us with option 4, integration." "Integration? You become part of this world knowingly. Under my protection you would be untouchable. But you would also be bound by our laws, our secrecy. You couldn't write about what you've learned or expose our existence. In exchange, you would have access to knowledge that no other human possesses. You could continue your life, your work, but with the understanding that you're now part of something larger. And if I refuse, then I'll do my best to protect you, but I can't guarantee your safety. Other vampires will test my claim. They'll look for opportunities. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." His expression was grave. "I don't say that to threaten you, Natalie. I say it because it's the truth of the situation." She walked to the other window, watching the last rays of sunlight fade from the garden. Part of her wanted to refuse on principle, to run back to her normal life and pretend none of this had happened. But she was a journalist, driven by curiosity and the pursuit of truth. And this was the biggest story imaginable, even if she could never tell it. "If I agree," she said slowly, "what exactly would that mean? Would I live here, if you wished? Or I could arrange protection at your own residence. You would have freedom to come and go, to live your life. But you would be under my protection officially, which means other vampires would view you as part of my household. Off limits, like a pet. Like someone under my care," he corrected gently. "I know the distinction might seem minor, but it's significant in our culture. You would be afforded respect and courtesy." Natalie turned to look at him. In the fading light, he looked even more otherworldly, beautiful and terrible at once. "Why do I get the feeling there's something you're not telling me? A flash of something, surprise, approval?" Crossed his features. "Perceptive. Yes, there's a complication. By claiming you as mine last night, I've already set certain things in motion. Other vampires will interpret our relationship according to their own understanding. Some will assume you're my blood donor. Others will think you're a pet or a thrall. A few will suspect you're something more, intimate. Are you saying they'll think we're together? Some will, yes. And correcting that assumption might actually put you in more danger. A donor or servant can be dismissed. But if they believe you're someone I value personally, someone I've chosen, they won't dare touch you. So you want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Your vampire girlfriend? I'm asking you to let them believe what they want to believe. And to stay close enough to me that my protection is unquestionable. He moved closer, and she caught that scent again. Something cold and sweet like night-blooming flowers. I know it's not ideal, but it's the safest option for you, Natalie laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. This is insane. 24 hours ago, my biggest problem was a deadline for an article on city corruption. Now I'm standing in a vampire mansion discussing how to fake a relationship with a 300-year-old vampire king. Technically, I'm closer to 340, Draeven said, and there was a hint of humor in his voice. That doesn't make it better. Perhaps not, but it's the situation we're in. He extended his hand, palm up, the same gesture he'd made in the tunnel. What do you say, Natalie Keller? Will you accept my protection and enter this world knowingly? She stared at his pale hand, thinking about everything she'd learned, everything that had happened. She thought about the vampires who'd tried to kill her, about the impossible things she'd seen, about the library full of secrets and the possibility of understanding a hidden world. And she thought about Draeven himself, the way he'd protected her without hesitation, the way he'd been nothing but honest with her, even when the truth was difficult, the way he looked at her with those crimson eyes like she was something more than just a problem to be solved. One condition, she said. Name it. You answer my questions, all of them. If I'm going to be part of this world, I want to understand it. I want the truth, not the sanitized version, agreed. His hand remained extended. Anything else? Yeah. If I do this, if I let them think we're together, nothing happens that I don't explicitly agree to. I'm not anyone's property, not even metaphorically. You have my word, he said solemnly. I will never touch you without your permission, never compel you, never treat you as anything less than an equal. You are under my protection, but you are not owned. Natalie took his hand. His skin was cool against hers, not quite cold, but definitely not warm. His grip was firm but careful, as if he was very aware of how easily he could hurt her. For a moment they stood there in the fading light, connected by that simple touch. Then it's done, Draeven said quietly. Welcome to the night world, Natalie. The following days fell into a strange routine. Natalie kept her apartment but spent most evenings at the Sanguis estate. Draeven insisted on driving her back and forth himself, explaining that the other vampires needed to see them together, needed to accept that she was under his direct protection. During those drives they talked. Draeven told her about the history of vampires, how they'd existed in the shadows of human civilization for millennia, how they'd learned to adapt, to use human laws and structures to protect themselves, how the modern world with its cameras and connectivity had forced them to become even more careful. We're not the monsters of legend, he explained one night as they drove through the city. Or rather we are, but we're also more than that. We're people who've lived too long, seen too much. We're predators who've learned to coexist with our prey because extinction serves no one. Do you miss it? Natalie asked. Being human? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't remember being human. I was turned in 1682. The memories of my mortal life are like dreams now, faded and uncertain. I remember feelings more than facts, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of food. But I've been this for so long that humanity feels like a story I was told about someone else. Do you regret it? Sometimes. Immortality sounds appealing until you've buried everyone you've ever loved a dozen times over, until you've watched civilizations rise and fall, until you've felt the weight of centuries pressing down on you. He glanced at her. But there are beautiful things too. The accumulation of knowledge, the ability to shape the world slowly, carefully, the rare connections that transcend time. Is that why you became king? I became king because someone had to. The territory was in chaos. Vampires feeding openly, creating new vampires without control. Humans were starting to notice, so I stepped in, established laws, created order. It wasn't about wanting power. It was about preventing catastrophe. The more time she spent with him, the more Natalie's fear faded, replaced by fascination. Draeven was intelligent, well-read, surprisingly funny when he let his guard down. He treated her with a respect that was unusual even among human men she'd dated. He listened when she spoke, considered her opinions, never dismissed her, and he was beautiful. She tried not to notice, tried to keep things professional, but it was impossible to ignore. The way he moved, fluid and graceful. The way his crimson eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. The way his rare smiles transformed his entire face. 2 weeks after she'd agreed to his protection, Draeven invited her to attend a gathering of the local vampire court. It's a formal introduction, he explained. The vampires of my territory have heard about you, but they need to see you to understand that my protection is real and absolute. It will also give you a chance to see how our society functions. What should I expect? Politeness masking danger. Vampires are eternally polite until they're not. There will be questions, tests of your knowledge and understanding. Some will try to unsettle you or gauge my reaction to threats against you. Stay close to me and follow my lead. The gathering was held in a converted warehouse in the meatpacking district. From the outside it looked abandoned, but inside was a revelation. High ceilings, elegant furnishings, candles and modern lighting creating dramatic shadows. Vampires filled the space, dozens of them, all with that same pale beauty. Natalie wore a dress that Seraphine had selected for her, deep emerald green that was elegant without being too revealing. Draeven had offered his arm as they entered, and she took it, feeling the eyes of every vampire in the room turn toward them. The conversations died down gradually as Draeven led her through the crowd. Vampires bowed or inclined their heads as he passed. Some studied Natalie with undisguised curiosity, others with something that looked like hunger. "Lords and ladies of the court," Draeven announced, his voice carrying easily through the space. "I present Natalie Keller, who is under my personal protection. She has been made aware of our nature and has agreed to join our world as a guest and observer. Any harm that comes to her will be considered a direct attack on me. I trust I make myself clear." "Quite clear, my lord," a male vampire with dark eyes said, stepping forward. "Though some of us question the wisdom of bringing an uninitiated human so deeply into our confidence." "Your questions are noted, Victor," Draeven replied coolly, and dismissed. Victor's jaw tightened, but he bowed and stepped back. The message was clear. Draeven's word was law, and there would be no debate. The rest of the evening was a careful dance of vampire politics. Natalie was introduced to various members of the court, each encounter a small test. They asked her questions about what she knew, what she thought of vampires, how she felt about being under Draeven's protection. She answered honestly but carefully, aware that every word was being weighed and analyzed. Seraphine and Lucien stayed close, flanking her when Draeven had to speak with other vampires. They were protective in their own way, and Natalie appreciated it. "You're doing well," Seraphine murmured during a quiet moment. "Most humans would be terrified. You're holding your own." "I'm terrified," Natalie admitted. "I'm just good at hiding it. That's even more impressive." As the night wore on, Natalie noticed a woman watching her from across the room. She was beautiful even among vampires, with silver hair that fell in waves to her waist and eyes that gleamed with intelligence and something darker. "Who is that?" Natalie asked Draeven when he returned to her side. "Morgoth," he said, his voice neutral. "She's one of the oldest vampires in the territory, second only to me in age and power. We have history." "What kind of history?" "The complicated kind." He steered her away from Morgoth's gaze. "She was my lover once, centuries ago. It ended poorly. She hasn't quite forgiven me." Before Natalie could ask more, Morgoth glided across the room to stand before them. Up close she was even more striking, her beauty cold and perfect as a frozen lake. "Draeven," she said, her voice like silk over steel. "How unexpected. I never thought I'd see the day when you'd claim a human. Times change, Morgoth, even for us." "Indeed." Her gaze moved to Natalie, assessing and finding her lacking. "She's quite ordinary, isn't she? I expected someone more careful," Draeven said softly, but there was warning in the word. "Oh, I mean no offense." Morgoth's smile was all teeth. "I'm simply curious what you see in her. She's mortal, fragile. She'll age and die in the blink of an eye. Surely you remember how that ends." "I remember," Draeven said, "and my choices are mine to make." "Of course." Morgoth inclined her head mockingly. "Enjoy your pet, my lord. I hope she proves more entertaining than your last human fascination." She drifted away, leaving a cold tension in her wake. "I'm sorry," Draeven said quietly. "She can be difficult." "She's in love with you," Natalie said. "It wasn't a question, she thinks she is." "In truth, Morgoth is in love with power, and I represent the ultimate power in this territory. What she feels for me is possession, not love." "And what did you feel for her?" He considered the question carefully. "Once I thought it might be love, but loving Morgoth is like trying to hold winter in your hands. Beautiful, cold, and ultimately harmful." He turned to face Natalie fully. "Are you all right?" "I know this is overwhelming. I'm fine, just processing," she managed to smile. "Your ex-girlfriend is terrifying, by the way." "Yes," he agreed. "She is." The gathering continued for several more hours. By the time Draeven led her out to the car, Natalie was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. She'd been on high alert all night, constantly aware that she was surrounded by predators who could kill her in an instant. "You were magnificent," Draeven said as they drove back toward her apartment. The court was impressed. Some were confused, some disapproving, but all of them understand now that you're under my protection. "Was that enough? Am I safe now?" "Safer," he said. "There will always be risks, but you've made a strong first impression. That matters in our world." When they reached her building, he walked her to her door as he always did. It had become their routine, these moments in the hallway where they said goodnight. Natalie found herself lingering, not quite ready to go inside. "Draeven," she said, Can I ask you something personal? Always. Why are you really doing this? Protecting me, bringing me into your world. You could have just killed me that first night or left me to die. Why didn't you? He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost vulnerable. When I saw you in that tunnel, about to die, something in me reacted that I haven't felt in a very long time. A need to protect, to save. And when I looked into your eyes and saw your courage, your refusal to give up even in the face of death, I was intrigued, then fascinated. Now. He trailed off. Now, she prompted. Now I find myself looking forward to our conversations, to seeing how you react to new discoveries, to the way you challenge me, question me, refuse to be intimidated even when you probably should be. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His cool fingers lingered against her cheek. You make me remember what it was like to feel, Natalie. After 300 years of existing, you make me feel alive. Her breath caught. The air between them felt charged, electric. She could see the want in his crimson eyes, carefully controlled but unmistakable, and she realized with a start that she felt it too. This pull toward him that was both terrifying and exhilarating. I should go inside, she whispered, but she didn't move. You should, he agreed, but his hand remained against her cheek. They stood there for a heartbeat longer, teetering on the edge of something. Then Draeven stepped back, breaking the moment with visible effort. Good night, Natalie. Good night. She went inside and closed the door, leaning against it with her heart racing. This was becoming complicated in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was supposed to be playing a role, letting vampires believe she was with Draeven. But somewhere along the way, the pretense had started to feel real. The following weeks brought more integration into the vampire world. Natalie attended gatherings, learned vampire customs, even began to recognize individual vampires and their roles in the court. Lucienne became a friend, teaching her about vampire history. Seraphine showed her the more artistic side of vampire culture, introducing her to vampire artists and musicians who created works of haunting beauty. And Draeven was always there, a constant presence. He continued to drive her, to escort her to events, to protect her. But there was something growing between them that went beyond protection. Small touches that lingered, conversations that stretched late into the night, moments where their eyes met and the whole world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. Natalie tried to resist it. She told herself it was impossible, that he was a vampire, that any relationship between them was doomed from the start. But her heart didn't seem to care about logic. One night, about a month after she'd entered the vampire world, Draeven invited her to a private dinner at the estate. Just the two of them, he specified. No court, no audience. She found him in a smaller dining room she hadn't seen before. It was intimate, with a table set for one. Candles provided the only light, casting dancing shadows on the walls. You don't eat, she said, stating the obvious. No, but I enjoy the ritual of dinner, the conversation. And I wanted to spend time with you without the weight of vampire politics. He pulled out her chair. I hope that's all right. It's more than all right. Dinner was exquisite. Draeven had clearly instructed his human staff to prepare something special. They talked as she ate, ranging from philosophy to current events to shared observations about the vampire court. Victor is still causing problems, Draeven mentioned. He questions my decisions regarding you. He thinks I've gone soft, that I'm compromising the territory's security for a human. Is he right? Perhaps. But security isn't just about eliminating threats, it's about building something worth protecting. And you, he paused. You've become important to me, Natalie. More important than I intended. She set down her fork, her appetite forgotten. Draeven, I know what you're going to say. That it's complicated, that it can't work, that I'm immortal and you're not. I've had those same thoughts every day since I met you. He leaned forward, his crimson eyes intense. But I can't seem to make myself care about the obstacles. All I know is that for the first time in centuries, I want something beyond duty and responsibility. I want you. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. This is insane. We barely know each other. I've lived for over 300 years, I've known thousands of people. And in a month you've become more real to me than most of them ever were. He reached across the table, his pale hand palm up in that now familiar gesture. I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight. I just needed you to know the truth, that this stopped being pretense for me weeks ago. Natalie stared at his hand, at his face, at the vulnerability in his expression that he rarely showed. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea, but the rest of her, the part that had been drawn to him from that first night, didn't care about rationality. She placed her hand in his. It stopped being pretense for me too, she admitted. I've been trying to fight it, trying to tell myself it's just the circumstances, the danger, the novelty of your world. But I can't deny it anymore. I have feelings for you. His fingers closed around hers, cool and strong. Then what do we do? I don't know. Figure it out as we go? Together? Together. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and tender that it made her chest ache. Then that's what we'll do. The moment was shattered by a crash from somewhere in the mansion. Draeven was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor changing from lover to warrior in a heartbeat. Stay here, he commanded. But Natalie was already following him. They reached the entrance hall to find Lucien locked in combat with two other vampires she didn't recognize. Blood dark and viscous stained the marble floor. Assassins, Lucien gasped. From outside the territory. Draeven moved like death itself. One moment he was beside Natalie, the next he was in the middle of the fight. The intruders didn't stand a chance. He moved with brutal efficiency, his speed and strength overwhelming. Within seconds, both assassins were on the ground, Draeven's hand around one's throat. Who sent you? He demanded. The vampire just laughed, blood bubbling from his lips. You've made enemies, King. Powerful ones. They don't appreciate you breaking tradition for a human whore. Draeven's hand tightened and there was a sickening crack. The vampire dissolved into ash. He turned to the other, but that one had already chosen death, biting through his own tongue to bleed out faster rather than face interrogation. Damn it, Draeven swore. He turned to find Natalie still standing there, having witnessed the brutal violence. I told you to stay back. Who were they? She asked, refusing to be distracted by his anger. Rogues, vampires who reject the established order. He ran a hand through his white hair, leaving streaks of blood. They see my protection of you as weakness, as betrayal of vampire superiority. This is what I was trying to protect you from. I'm not some delicate flower that needs to be locked away, Natalie said. If my presence is causing problems, if vampires are coming after you because of me, don't. He crossed to her, his bloody hands gripping her shoulders gently. Don't even think about leaving. That's exactly what they want. To frighten you away, to prove that humans and vampires can't coexist. People are going to die because of me. Vampires die regardless. This is politics, Natalie. Victor is behind this, I'm certain. He's been undermining me for years and you've given him an excuse to act. His thumbs stroked her shoulders, a soothing gesture at odds with the violence still lingering in the air. I will handle this, but I need you to trust me. She looked up at him, at this creature who had saved her, protected her, cared for her, who had just killed two vampires without hesitation to keep her safe. I trust you. Then stay with me tonight. Here where I can protect you properly, please. She nodded. The truth was she didn't want to leave. Didn't want to be apart from him, especially now when danger felt so close. Draeven had Seraphine prepare a room near his own quarters. As the household settled back into an uneasy calm, he walked Natalie to her door. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said quietly. The violence. I know it must have been frightening. I've seen violence before, she replied. War zones, remember? It's the reason behind it that bothers me more. Victor wants power, he always has. He's older than most of the court, believes he should be king. Your presence has given him ammunition to claim I'm unfit to rule. So make him think I'm not important. Distance yourself from me, absolutely not. The words came out fierce, almost possessive. You're mine, Natalie. Mine to protect, mine to care for. And I don't abandon what's mine. The intensity in his voice sent shivers down her spine. Draeven. He stepped closer, backing her gently against the door. I know I should be more careful with you. I know I should keep my distance, maintain boundaries. But after tonight, after nearly losing you to assassins, I can't pretend anymore. Pretend what? That I don't want you. That I don't crave you in ways that have nothing to do with blood. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her lower lip. Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me you don't want this and I'll go back to being just your protector. But if there's even a chance that you feel what I feel. Natalie's answer was to rise on her toes and press her lips to his. The kiss was electric. His lips were cool against hers but soft, moving with a gentleness that contrasted with his earlier violence. She felt his sharp intake of breath, felt his body tense and then melt against her. His arms came around her waist, pulling her closer, and she buried her hands in his white hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathless despite his lack of need for air, Draeven rested his forehead against hers. That was either the wisest or most foolish thing we could have done, he murmured. Probably foolish, she agreed. I don't care. He kissed her again, deeper this time, with a hunger that made her knees weak. She felt the press of his fangs against her lower lip, not breaking skin but present, a reminder of what he was. Instead of frightening her, it thrilled her. Finally, with visible reluctance, Draeven pulled back. You should rest. Tomorrow will bring challenges. Will you be all right? The assassins, I'll be fine. I'm going to have some very pointed conversations with certain members of my court. His smile was predatory. Don't worry about me, Natalie. Worry about Victor and anyone foolish enough to join him. She kissed him once more, quick and soft, before slipping into her room. She leaned against the closed door, touching her lips where she could still feel the pressure of his kiss. Everything had just become infinitely more complicated, and she found she didn't regret it at all. The next evening, Draeven called an emergency session of the vampire court. Natalie stood beside him in the great hall of the estate, which had been transformed into a throne room of sorts. Draeven sat in a high-backed chair that was almost a throne, and she stood at his right hand, a position that clearly meant something by the way the assembled vampires reacted. "We are here," Draeven announced, his voice carrying absolute authority, "because members of this court attempted to have a human under my protection assassinated." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Victor stood near the front, his expression carefully neutral. "Bold accusation, my lord," he said. "Do you have proof?" "I have 2 piles of ash that used to be vampires bearing your scent, Victor. Did you think I wouldn't recognize it?" Draeven leaned forward. "You've been planning this for months, undermining my authority, spreading dissent. And when I claimed Natalie, you saw your opportunity." "She's a security risk," Victor argued. "A human who knows our secrets, who has access to our world. You've compromised everything for a woman you're infatuated with." "I've protected someone under my care," Draeven countered. "Which is what a king does. Or have you forgotten that our power comes with responsibility? Responsibility to our own kind, not to humans. Our own kind exists because we've learned to coexist with humans, because we've established laws and order. What you're proposing is a return to chaos, to the old ways when vampire hunters nearly drove us to extinction." Draeven stood, and his presence seemed to fill the room. "I am the law in this territory. My word is absolute, and I have decided that Natalie Keller is under my personal protection. Any who challenge that challenge me directly. Then I challenge you." Victor stepped forward. "For the right to rule this territory. For the right to return us to proper vampire law, free from human contamination." A collective gasp went through the room. Natalie's blood ran cold. Challenge. She didn't need anyone to explain what that meant. Victor was calling for a duel, a fight to the death. "Victor, don't be a fool," Lucien called out. "Lord Draeven is ancient beyond measure. You can't possibly—" "I accept," Draeven interrupted calmly. "Tomorrow night the challenge will be answered. We will meet in the traditional place and the court will witness." "Draeven, no," Natalie whispered, but he didn't look at her. "This is our way," he said quietly, just to her. "It has to be done." The court dispersed shortly after, vampires clustering in groups to whisper and speculate. Natalie followed Draeven back to his private study, her mind racing. "You can't fight him," she said as soon as the door closed. "There has to be another way. There isn't. He's invoked the ancient challenge. If I refuse, I forfeit my position as king. The territory will fall into chaos." He poured himself a glass of blood from a crystal decanter, sipping it like wine. "Don't worry, Victor is strong, but I'm older. I'll win. You don't know that?" "Yes, I do." He set down the glass and pulled her into his arms. "I've survived 3 centuries because I'm very good at violence when necessary. Victor is a fool for challenging me. Why is he doing this? Pride, ambition. He genuinely believes he'd be a better king. He sees my protection of you as weakness, as proof that I've lost my edge." Draeven's arms tightened around her. "He's wrong. If anything, having something to protect makes me more dangerous, not less." Natalie buried her face in his chest, breathing in his strange, cold scent. "I couldn't bear it if you died because of me. I won't, I promise." He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Have faith in me, Natalie. I've fought and won battles that would make tomorrow night look like a mild disagreement." The following evening arrived too quickly. The traditional place turned out to be an abandoned warehouse that had been used for vampire duels for over a century. The entire court assembled, forming a circle around a cleared space in the center. Natalie stood with Lucien and Seraphine, her heart in her throat. Draeven had removed his jacket and stood in just a white shirt and dark pants. Victor faced him across the circle, looking confident and eager. "The challenge has been made and accepted," Lucien announced, acting as arbiter. "The fight is to submission or death. The winner claims the territory. Begin." They exploded into motion. Natalie had seen Draeven move before, had witnessed his speed and strength. But this was different. This was a vampire truly unleashed, holding nothing back. He and Victor were blurs of white and shadow, moving faster than her eyes could track. The sound of their impacts echoed through the warehouse like thunderclaps. Victor was skilled, she had to admit. He landed blows that would have killed a human instantly. But Draeven was better. Older, stronger, more experienced. He fought with brutal efficiency. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Blood splattered across the floor, vampire blood, dark and thick. Victor's face was a mask of fury and pain. Draeven's expression was cold, emotionless, the face of a king dispensing justice. It ended with shocking suddenness. Draeven got inside Victor's guard and drove his hand through the other vampire's chest. Victor's eyes went wide with shock and pain. "Yield," Draeven commanded. "Never," Victor gasped. "Then die knowing you failed." Draeven's hand closed around Victor's heart and yanked. Victor dissolved into ash, leaving only his clothes and the scent of death. The warehouse was utterly silent. Draeven stood in the center of the circle, covered in blood, his and Victor's, and surveyed his court. "Does anyone else wish to challenge me?" he asked quietly. No one moved. No one spoke. "Then this matter is settled. Victor's followers are granted mercy if they swear loyalty now. Otherwise, you have until dawn to leave my territory." Several vampires stepped forward immediately, kneeling and offering oaths of loyalty. Others slipped away into the shadows. Draeven accepted the oaths with formal grace, then turned and walked straight to Natalie. "Let's go home," he said, his voice tired. She took his bloodied hand without hesitation and let him lead her to the car. Back at the estate, she helped him clean up, wiping blood from his face and hands with warm cloths. He sat silently, letting her care for him, his eyes distant. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. "I've killed many people over the centuries," he said. "It never gets easier, but it becomes necessary. Victor gave me no choice. I know I would do it again. For you, for the safety of this territory, I would do it 1,000 times. He caught her hand, pressing it to his cheek. "But I still regret the necessity." Natalie leaned forward and kissed him gently. "You did what you had to do. You protected your people, including me. That's what a good king does." "You're remarkable," he murmured against her lips. "So many humans would be horrified, frightened. But you understand. I understand that the world is more complicated than good and evil. I understand that you're trying to build something better, even if the methods are harsh." She kissed him again. "And I understand that I'm completely, impossibly in love with you." His eyes widened. For a moment, the ancient vampire king looked utterly vulnerable. "You love me?" "Yes, I know it's insane. I know it's only been weeks. I know you're immortal and I'm not, and there are 1,000 reasons this shouldn't work. But I love you anyway, Natalie." He pulled her into his lap, cradling her against his chest. "I thought I'd forgotten how to love, thought that emotion had been buried under centuries of duty and death. But you've awakened something in me I thought was long dead. I love you. Desperately. Completely." They kissed again, deeper, more passionate. His fangs grazed her lip, and this time she felt a small sting as they broke skin. The taste of her blood seemed to electrify him. He groaned against her mouth, his arms tightening. "Natalie." He pulled back, his eyes blazing crimson. "I should stop." "Why?" "Because I want to bite you properly, want to taste you fully, and that's a line we shouldn't cross lightly." She understood what he was saying. A vampire's bite could be many things: sustenance, pleasure, or with the right intent, the first step toward turning someone. "What would happen if you did? If I just fed from you?" "It would forge a deeper connection between us. You would be able to sense me, feel my emotions. It's intimate in ways beyond the physical." His thumb traced her lower lip where he'd accidentally cut it. "If I fed from you with the intent to turn you, to make you vampire, that's irreversible. You would die as a human and be reborn as one of us. Have you thought about it, turning me?" "Every day," he admitted. "It's the obvious solution. If you were vampire, we could be together truly, without the fear of your mortality. But I can't make that choice for you. It has to be yours." "I'm not ready to decide that yet," she said honestly. "Can we just be together for now? Figure out the rest later?" "Yes." He kissed her forehead, tender and reverent. "We have time, not forever, but time." They spent the night together, wrapped in each other's arms. Draeven showed her a tenderness she hadn't known he possessed, and Natalie surrendered to feelings she'd been fighting since the moment they met. There was no turning back now. For better or worse, she belonged to the Vampire King, and he to her. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Natalie's life. With Victor gone and his followers either sworn to loyalty or exiled, the court settled into a new equilibrium. Natalie became a fixture at the estate. Accepted if not fully understood by the vampires, she continued her work as a journalist, though she had to be careful never to touch on anything that might expose the vampire world. Draeven helped her find stories that mattered, using his centuries of knowledge and connections to point her toward corruption and injustice she could actually write about. Their relationship deepened. Draeven courted her with the old-fashioned elegance of his era, bringing her flowers that bloomed only at night, taking her to vampire cultural events that left her breathless, teaching her the history of his kind. But he was also thoroughly modern in the ways that mattered, respecting her autonomy, her career, her need for independence. He fed from her occasionally, always with permission, always careful. The experience was intimate and intense, a physical manifestation of their connection. Natalie found she enjoyed it, enjoyed the way his eyes blazed, the way his cool body seemed to warm against hers. 3 months after she'd entered the vampire world, Morgoth requested an audience with her. I wouldn't normally agree to this, Draeven said when he told Natalie about the request. But Morgoth is too powerful to ignore completely, and she's been surprisingly quiet since my victory over Victor. Meet with her, but be careful. She's cunning and holds grudges for centuries. They met in a neutral location, a cafe that catered to vampires, open only at night, with private booths warded for sound. Morgoth was already there when Natalie arrived, looking elegant and cold in a white dress. Miss Keller, she greeted. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Lady Morgoth. Natalie slid into the booth across from her. What can I do for you? I wanted to apologize. The words seemed to cost her. I was cruel to you at the gathering. It was petty and beneath me. Why the change of heart? Because I've been watching you and Draeven together, and I've realized something. Morgoth's crimson eyes were steady. He loves you, truly loves you, in a way he never loved me. I've spent centuries thinking that if I could just get him back, make him see what we could have together. But I was wrong. He never looked at me the way he looks at you. Natalie didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, she offered finally. Don't be. It's not your fault that I wasted centuries on a fantasy. Morgoth leaned back. I'm not here to ask you to give him up or to threaten you. I'm here to warn you. About what? About what loving an immortal means. You're human, Natalie. You'll age. You'll die. And Draeven will continue on for centuries after you're gone. Her expression was almost gentle. I've seen vampires fall in love with humans before. It never ends well. Either the human gets turned and loses their humanity, or they die and leave the vampire destroyed. I know the risks. Do you? Have you really thought about what it means? Not just the ending, but every moment until then. Watching yourself age while he stays eternally young. Knowing that every memory you make will eventually fade for you while remaining crystal clear for him. Living in his world but never truly belonging to it. I've thought about it, Natalie said quietly. And I've decided that loving him is worth whatever pain comes later. I'd rather have years with Draeven than a lifetime without him. Morgoth studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're braver than I gave you credit for. I hope you find happiness together, truly. But if the time comes when it's too much, when the differences become too great, don't make him watch you suffer. Let him turn you, or let him go. Those are the only kind options. I'll remember that. Good, Morgoth stood. I won't trouble you again, Miss Keller. Take care of him. He deserves happiness after so long without it. Natalie watched her leave, feeling strangely moved by the encounter. Morgoth was right about the challenges ahead, but she'd also underestimated one crucial thing. Natalie had faced war zones, corruption, death threats, and violence. She wasn't someone who ran from difficulty. When she returned to the estate and told Draeven about the meeting, he held her close. She's not wrong, he said. About the challenges we'll face. I know, but I'm not afraid of challenges. What if I lose you? What if you grow old and die and leave me alone again? Then you'll mourn me and eventually find you again. You're strong, Draeven. You've survived centuries. You'll survive me too. She cupped his face in her hands. But that's years away. Decades if I'm lucky. Let's not waste the time we have worrying about the end. He kissed her deeply, pouring centuries of loneliness and longing into the contact. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she agreed with a smile. But you're stuck with me anyway. 6 months into their relationship, on a cold December night, Draeven took Natalie to the roof of the estate. The city sprawled below them, lights glittering like stars. He wrapped her in his coat and held her against the chill. I have something to ask you, he said. That sounds ominous. It's a choice, one you don't have to answer now, but I want you to start thinking about it. He turned her to face him. I want you to be my queen, not just my partner but my equal in ruling this territory. I want you to have the authority and respect that comes with that position. Natalie blinked. I'm human. Can a vampire territory even have a human queen? There's no law against it. It's unprecedented, but so are we. The court respects you already. They've seen your strength, your intelligence. With my backing and some formalized training in vampire law and politics, you could do it. He took her hands. But there's a complication. What? For you to rule as queen and have the authority needed, you would need to be my queen in truth, bound to me through blood and oath. It wouldn't require turning you, not yet. But it would mean a permanent connection between us, one that can't be broken. How permanent? Until one of us dies. If you chose to remain human, it would end with your mortal death. If you chose to turn someday, it would be eternal. Natalie's mind raced. Queen of the vampires. It sounded insane, impossible. But then again, everything about her life for the past 6 months had been impossible. What would this blood bond involve? An exchange. I would drink from you and you would drink from me. Not enough to turn you, but enough to connect our life forces. You would gain some minor benefits: enhanced healing, resistance to vampire compulsion, extended lifespan. Not immortality, but you'd age more slowly. And the downside? You'd be tied to me irrevocably. You'd feel my emotions, sense when I'm in danger. And if I died, the bond would break in a way that would be painful for you. His expression was serious. I wouldn't ask lightly, Natalie, but I want a future with you. A real one, built on equality and choice. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. But as she stood there on the roof, looking at this impossible man who'd saved her life and stolen her heart, Natalie realized she'd already made her decision. She'd made it the moment she'd first taken his hand in that tunnel. She'd made it every day since when she chose to stay, to love him, to build a life in his world. I don't need time, she said. I want to do it. I want to be your queen. His eyes blazed with joy and relief. You're certain, completely. We'll figure out the rest as we go, but I want this. I want you. I want us. He kissed her there under the stars, and Natalie felt the rightness of the decision settle into her bones. This was her path, strange and impossible as it was. The bonding ceremony took place a week later, witnessed by the full vampire court. Natalie wore a dress of deep crimson, and Draeven wore formal black. They stood before the assembled vampires, and Lucien presided as the eldest member of the court. We are here to witness the bonding of Lord Draeven Sanguis and Natalie Keller, Lucien announced. A bond between vampire and human, king and chosen queen. Let any who object speak now. Silence, not even a whisper of dissent, then proceed. Draeven produced a ceremonial knife, its blade silver and etched with ancient symbols. This will hurt, he warned softly, only for her ears, I know. He made a cut across his palm, then held out his hand. Natalie took the knife and cut her own palm, wincing at the sharp pain. Then she pressed her bleeding hand to his. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Power rushed through her, cold and ancient and vast. She gasped, her knees buckling, but Draeven caught her. His eyes were glowing now, crimson, so bright they seemed to burn. Drink, he commanded, bringing his wrist to his lips and opening a vein with his fangs. She hesitated only a moment before pressing her mouth to the wound. Vampire blood tasted nothing like she expected, sweet and metallic and electric. It burned going down her throat, but not painfully. More like lightning, like fire, like life itself concentrated into liquid form. After a few swallows, Draeven pulled his wrist away and bent to her neck. Last chance to stop this, he murmured. Don't stop. His fangs pierced her throat, and pleasure exploded through her system. This was different from the gentle feeding they'd done before. This was intense, overwhelming, intimate beyond words. She felt him in her mind, felt his love and desire and centuries of loneliness finally ending. When he pulled back, licking the wounds closed, they were both breathing hard. The bond settled into place like a missing piece of a puzzle clicking home. Natalie could feel him now, a presence in the back of her mind. His emotions, his strength, his eternal nature. It's done, Lucien announced. Lady Natalie Keller is now queen of this territory, bound to Lord Draeven through blood and oath. All honor her as they would honor him. The court knelt as one. Even Morgath, standing near the back, bowed her head in acknowledgement. Draeven pulled Natalie into his arms and kissed her before everyone, claiming her publicly and irrevocably. When they broke apart, she was dizzy with power and love and possibility. How do you feel? He asked. Like I could take on the world. Good. Because ruling at my side won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. They spent the rest of the night celebrating with the court. Vampires who'd been skeptical of Natalie initially approached to offer congratulations and pledges of loyalty. She accepted them with grace, already stepping into her role as queen. Later, alone in Draeven's chambers, they made love with the bond singing between them. Natalie could feel everything he felt, the overwhelming love and desire and satisfaction. It was intoxicating and terrifying and perfect. I never thought I'd have this, Draeven whispered against her skin. A partner, an equal. Someone who chose this life knowing all its dangers. I choose you, Natalie replied. Every day I choose you. In the months that followed, Natalie learned to rule. She studied vampire law, mediated disputes, made decisions that affected the entire territory. Some vampires still resented having a human queen, but most came to respect her intelligence and fairness. The bond proved invaluable. She could sense when vampires were lying or when situations were more dangerous than they appeared, and having Draeven's strength backing her gave her confidence she'd never had before. Her journalism career adapted. She became known as an expert on urban policy and hidden communities. writing articles that touched on truth without ever revealing the secret. She used her position to advocate for better treatment of the city's marginalized populations, knowing that many of them had been affected by vampire politics without ever knowing it. A year after they'd bonded, Natalie brought up the question that had been growing in her mind. "What if I want to turn?" she asked one night as they lay together. "What if I want to be vampire, to spend eternity with you?" Draven was quiet for a long time. "Is that what you want? Truly?" "I think so. I've been living in your world for over a year now. I understand what it means, the sacrifices and the costs, but I also understand what I'd gain. Time with you, the ability to rule properly without the handicap of mortality, a life beyond what I ever imagined. You would lose sunlight, food, the ability to have children if you wanted them. Your humanity itself, I know. But I'd gain you and this world and centuries to make a difference." She propped herself up on one elbow. "I'm not saying I want to do it tomorrow, but maybe in a few years when I've accomplished what I want to accomplish as a human. When I'm ready to close that chapter and begin a new one, then we'll do it," he said simply. "When you're ready, I'll turn you, and we'll face eternity together. You're not going to try to talk me out of it. You're my queen, Natalie. If you say you're ready, then I believe you." He pulled her down for a kiss. "Besides, I've been hoping you'd choose this. I love you as you are, but the thought of having you by my side forever, it's everything I've wanted since the moment I met you." 3 years after Natalie first entered the vampire world, she made her choice. She'd accomplished everything she'd wanted to as a human journalist. She'd built a reputation, won awards, made a difference. And she'd learned everything she needed to know about being a vampire queen. On a quiet night with only their closest friends present, Lucienne, Seraphine, and surprisingly, Morgoth Draven turned her. The process was agonizing. Dying was never easy, even when you knew you'd wake up again. Natalie felt her heart stop, felt her human life drain away. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Draven's face, tears of blood streaking his pale cheeks. When she woke 3 days later, the world was different. Sharper, clearer, more vibrant. She could hear heartbeats from houses away, could smell individual components of the air itself. And she was hungry in a way she'd never been before. Draven was there, holding her, guiding her through those first disorienting moments. "Welcome back, my love." She looked down at her hands, pale now, white as marble. She touched her hair and found it had gone silver. When she found a mirror, crimson eyes stared back at her. "I'm beautiful," she whispered. "You were always beautiful. Now you're eternal." The first few weeks were difficult as she learned to control her new strength and hunger. But with Draven's patient guidance and the support of the court, she adapted. And when she finally stepped back into her role as queen with her full vampire powers, she was unstoppable. 5 years after her transformation, Natalie stood beside Draven in the throne room, surveying their court. The territory was thriving, crime was down, the vampire population was stable and well-regulated. Humans and vampires coexisted in secret harmony. "We've built something good here," she said to Draven. "We have, and will continue to build for centuries to come." She leaned into him, marveling at how far she'd come from that night in the tunnel when she'd been running for her life. She'd been saved by a vampire king and ended up becoming a queen herself. She'd found love in the darkness and chosen immortality to keep it. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Saving me that night? Starting all of this?" "Never," Draven said firmly. He turned her to face him, his crimson eyes meeting hers. "You're the best thing that's happened to me in 300 years. You've given me purpose beyond duty, love beyond duty. You've made eternity something to look forward to rather than just endure." "I love you," she said. The words she'd spoken thousands of times and would speak thousands more. "And I love you, my queen, my equal, my eternity." They kissed there in the throne room, vampire king and vampire queen, bound together by choice and blood and love. Outside, the city they protected continued its endless rhythm, humans and vampires sharing space without most ever knowing how deeply their worlds intertwined. Natalie had been given a second chance at life, a chance to be more than she'd ever imagined, and she'd seized it with both hands, building a future that honored both the human she'd been and the vampire she'd become. The story that had begun with a sword 3 inches from her neck had transformed into a love that would last centuries. And as she stood beside Draven, ruling their territory with wisdom and strength, Natalie knew she'd made the right choice. She'd chosen love over fear, immortality over safety, and eternity over certainty. And she'd never been happier. Years turned into decades. The world changed around them, technology advanced, human society evolved, new challenges emerged. But through it all, Natalie and Draven remained constant. Partners in rule and in love, facing everything the centuries threw at them together. They expanded their territory, absorbing smaller vampire domains whose leaders couldn't adapt to the modern world. They established networks with other vampire kings and queens, creating alliances that prevented the kind of chaos Victor had tried to bring. They advocated for laws that protected both vampires and humans, working to ensure that their coexistence remained stable. Natalie never forgot her human life, never stopped caring about human concerns. She used her position to influence human politics indirectly, steering the city toward policies that benefited everyone. She became known in vampire circles as the queen who bridged two worlds, equally comfortable in vampire court and human society. And through it all, her love for Draeven only deepened. They learned each other completely over the decades. Every strength and weakness, every fear and dream. They supported each other through difficult times and celebrated victories together. They were partners in the truest sense, neither one overshadowing the other. On the 50th anniversary of the night they'd met, Draeven took Natalie back to that subway tunnel. It had been renovated since then, turned into an art installation ironically titled, Gateway to Another World. They stood where he'd first stopped that sword, where he'd first said the words that would change both their lives. "Touch her and I end your bloodline," Natalie quoted, smiling at the memory. "Very dramatic, I meant every word." Draeven pulled her close. "And I still do. You're mine, Natalie, mine to protect, mine to love, mine to rule beside." "And you're mine," she replied, "my king, my love, my eternity." They kissed there in the tunnel, vampire queen and vampire king, their love story come full circle. 50 years had passed since that desperate night when a journalist running for her life had stumbled into something impossible. And now, with centuries still ahead of them, they faced the future with confidence and joy. The sword that had been 3 inches from her neck that night had been stopped by love, and that love had grown into something that would transcend time itself, a bond between two souls who'd found in each other everything they'd been searching for across lifetimes. Natalie Keller had been saved by a vampire king and had ended up saving him right back, pulling him out of centuries of loneliness into a life of connection and purpose. Together they'd built something beautiful and lasting, a kingdom of shadows ruled by love, a territory where vampires and humans could coexist, and a relationship that proved that sometimes the most impossible loves are the ones worth fighting for. As they left the tunnel and returned to their estate, to their court, to their carefully built life, both of them knew with absolute certainty that they'd found there forever. No matter what challenges the centuries ahead might bring, they would face them together, king and queen, vampire and vampire. But most importantly, two souls who'd chosen each other and would continue to choose each other for all eternity. Their love story had begun in violence and fear, but had transformed into something transcendent. And as the city they protected hummed with life around them, as their territory thrived under their joint rule, Natalie and Draeven knew they'd achieved something rare and precious. A truly happy ending that was also a beautiful, eternal beginning.